but just a collection of pictures. In this case, these are the pictures from my middle child, my Rebecca, my wife, several years ago. And if you notice, now she's almost 17. So these are pictures when she was probably the oldest on this picture. Is like 7 or 6. So these are now old pictures. But again, if you're from my generation, you have this. If you're younger, you have it on your phone or your Instagram. That's where you have them, right? But here's what we're going for the next few minutes as we think about this beautiful 2017. There is a Bible character at the beginning of the Bible, at the beginning of the scriptures, by the name of Moses. And Moses writes a psalm. In the book of Psalms, he writes one of the psalms, or at least it's attributed to him. He gets the credit for the writing of this psalm. And that is Psalm 90. If you grew up in church, you probably heard this psalm before. But here is what we're going to do, and we want you to think for a moment. On Psalm 90, which Moses is the guy that took the people of God from Egypt into the promised land. Anybody remembers how many years the process? 40 years in the wilderness. And on Psalm 90, which is more than likely written at the end of the journey, Moses was 40 years of age when he left Egypt. He was the prince of Egypt, left Egypt. Then he spends the next 40 years basically as a shepherd. So now he's 80. At the age of 80, he finds a burning bush, speaks to him. God speaks through that burning bush, and he goes back to Egypt to deliver the people. And he spends another 40 years in the wilderness now with people. So about 120, 130 years of age, he writes Psalm 90. And on Psalm 90, he's going through something like this. He's giving you kind of some sort of a detailed picture or pictures of what is taking place or took place in the wilderness. I don't have time to read Psalm 90, so I'm going to give it to you as an assignment. Go home today, beginning of the year, read Psalm 90. What I want you to see today, what we're going to do for the next few minutes, and as you think about this beautiful 2017, and if you have a Bible, you need to go with me to this. We're going to try to move from a world picture into a world view. From a world picture into a world view. Why? And this is why we need to consider this. Because when you think about pictures, and again, Moses giving us details, or, Moses is the one that is attributed that he writes the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And through those 5 books, he's giving you the pictures of what took place on the formation of the nation of Israel. So you go from slavery into 40 years in the wilderness into the actual experience of becoming a nation. But if you also understand what's going on through those 5 books of the Bible, it's also the creation, not just of a world picture or the details of how this took place, but ultimately the goal is to create a worldview. What does that mean? I want you to listen to me for a moment. Especially as we move into a brand new presidential stage, we have a new president-elect. As do you see our nation and our world, I'm of the mindset, this is my belief, this is what I believe on this. If this nation wants to become the nation that was supposed to be, or is supposed to be in the eyes of God, you have to read Moses. Because his writings are not only a world picture, but they are a world view. In other words, through Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, you see how Moses creates a family system, creates an economic system, creates a social system, creates a religious system. Now remember, he's taking a bunch of people who had no identity. They didn't know anything. They were slaves. And he creates a brand new nation. So if we were to embrace 2017, not simply with a collection of pictures, and I know you have a lot of pictures from 2016. I know you will get more pictures for 2017. I'm glad you do. But what if I ask you to embrace 2017, not just with pictures, but with a world view, with a mindset that reflects the heart of God? Now, to illustrate that, again, I'm going to go back to Moses. I want us to go to Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. Some of you can quote that verse. Some of you have no idea what that says. But Genesis 1:1 is the first verse that it speaks of beginnings, because this is a new beginning for us. So again, if you're going to move from a worldview, a world picture into a worldview, here's one of the questions I want you to think for a moment. I want you to move from understanding that Moses helped us to understand the eternality of God and the transitoriness of men. Man is eternal. We are transients. We're pilgrims in this world. I will even argue that if you settle, please listen, if you settle to simply embrace a world picture and you celebrate your journey, and potentially you get so in love with your journey, and granted, for some of us, the journey has been rough. For some of us, maybe one of the pictures is a divorce, or maybe the death of a loved one. And again, I'm sensitive to those topics because it's not easy to go and put pictures, or there might be missing pictures. But what if I told you that every one of the events that took place in 2016 and will take place in 2017 have to be filtered through the understanding that God is eternal and we are transients? What does that mean? That means that as we create the pictures of our lives for this new year, do not put pictures in your life as if this world is forever. This is temporary. Is that a fair statement? This is temporary. So as difficult and as painful as the missing pictures may be in your life, or maybe the pictures that you wish and you can remove, but they're in the past, so they make your life so you cannot remove them. I'm just telling you right now. We're transients. We are pilgrims. We're journey men. So, if you're going to wrestle with that, you need to come into this question. Again, Genesis chapter 1 is the verse that probably reminds us that at the end is the purpose. What is the purpose of inspiration and revelation? Now, Genesis chapter 1, even chapter 2 specifically, deals with creation. If you approach the creation or the beginning of life, the beginning of the world, right now, if you approach that with a world picture instead of a worldview, you and I will drive ourselves crazy. What does that mean? Please listen to me. That in this case, what we're trying to find out for the meaning of life, to move from a world picture into a worldview, from something that just, in my mind, I want the details. In this case, I want the details of the life of my middle child. But I just told you, she's 17 now. So now she is at an age where now she's making decisions on her own. And as a father, please listen to me, as a father, I celebrate the journey, and it's been a privilege to journey with my girl. But my goal is not just to have a bunch of pictures. My goal is that she will embrace a worldview that is reflected on how she makes decisions. Is that a fair statement? And that worldview, my heart's desire, based on the journey, is based on the scriptures. So I'm going to say that again. This is important. This is the goal. Worldview. So part of this worldview, once again, has to do with this question of the purpose of inspiration and the purpose of revelation. Why would God decide to limit himself in a sense of how he gave us Genesis chapter 1 and 2, because chapter 1 and 2 does not give us the details that we want. It doesn't. I wish and I can tell you how old the earth is. I wish and I could tell you what is this flood thing with Noah in detail. I don't have those things. What God gave us in Genesis is really the inspiration and the revelation of himself. Do you see the difference? So most people are caught up into the details where God is focused on the worldview. So now, that's the first question. Now, here is what I will call the bad news of the equation, if that was good news. The bad news is that as God moves from a world picture into a worldview, the challenge with God revealing himself is that as you and I approach 2017, and I'm assuming that you want to embrace a worldview, what God says and what God commands, I want you to begin with this understanding that we, all of us, we are historically, we are culturally, and we are theologically conditioned. What does that mean? Well, I just told you a while ago. Moses conveyed a message that says, God is eternal, we are not. So please listen to me for a moment. You and I, we have no choice. We can only process life through chronology, through time. If you take me away from time, I don't know how to process. I don't know how to digest information if you take me away from chronology. Every one of these pictures is an event that took place at a specific setting, at a specific time, with a specific people, because that's how we think. Those are our, what you call, conditions, the limitations. God doesn't have limitations. Does that make sense? So when it comes to Genesis and the narrative of this brand new beginning, you and I need to understand that as we engage into 2017, there will be pictures in your life that will be placed in your journey or in your family portraits or in your finances and relationships that unfortunately, you and I are conditioned to process those events. God isn't. Is that good news to you? That even though you and I were limited in time and in space, God is not? So today, here's what we need to understand, and here's some examples of these limitations. God conveys a message with the unresolved tension, with the both and. It's not an either or, it's a both and of love and power. Or in this case, I will use the word wrath. La ira de Dios. Wrath. Love and wrath. Is God loving or is God with a vengeance? And the answer is yes. Is God a God of grace or is God a God of justice? Yes. Is God or the narrative a literary piece, meaning the type of literature, or is it literal? So when you read Genesis 1, 2, 3, 4, and on the first day, and the second day, and the third day, and the fourth day, and God created, and God did, and God spoke, is that literal, or is it just a literary piece? See, this is where you're going to have to wrestle with me, because most of the things in life, you want to experience them literal. And some of the things that God has conveyed through the Bible are based on the literary piece. What kind of literature it is. Look at the last one. The challenge for us is that as I look life, I want to approach life, in this case the life of my child, through my personal view. So when she was born, I had expectations how a young lady is supposed to behave. That's all that I know, my worldview. That's how I was raised. That's my perception of young ladies. At age 17, she knows, I know, I have preconceived ideas. So when she speaks to me, I have a preconceived idea, but look at what happens here. I gotta base everything that I read in the Bible, or in this case in my relationships, through the intent of the inspired author. So I'm going to say that again. Going back to Genesis. When you read the creation story, what you cannot do is impose questions in this book that the author, in this case Moses, did not have. He did not have specific questions that you... Now, your question may be legit, and it's fine. But I'm telling you right now, you engage 2017 not simply with your worldview. My worldview is important because it's part of who I am. But the point in here is not who I am, but who God is. Does that make sense? I will even argue that if you don't know who God is, you will never know who you are. So this is why we do not engage 2017 with you at the beginning. It doesn't begin with me. It begins with God. Now, if you're a parent and you have a 17-year-old lady, you need God. Huh? That's all that I'm saying. I'm going to leave it right there. I'm going to leave it right there for now. But I'm just telling you guys, it's just part of the equation, and most of the time we settle for the world picture instead of the world view. So, here's the thing that you need to understand when it comes to Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 and the creation of the world. You have to begin understanding that this is a specific genre. Genre? Everybody understands what the word genre means? In other words, 66 books, okay, about 40 plus authors, in approximately 1600 to 1700 years period. That's a lot of time. That's a lot of authors. So they wrote multiple styles of writings. So when you read Genesis, you gotta figure out first, you gotta find out what kind of genre is it. What does that mean? Please listen to me for a moment. When it comes to your life, when it comes to the pictures that you're about to place on your timeline. Some of you singles wish that you can have this year a marriage picture. Some of you will. Some of you parents wish that your kids will have a marriage picture. You're like, come on, hurry up. Okay, so whatever pictures you put in here, you need to understand that there is a style of writing or a style of life. And let me say this to you. The beautiful thing about the Bible, 66 books, which I hope and you embrace and you believed as a whole, must be filtered through one genre. His name is Jesus. So listen to me for a moment. Creation, the creation of the world, the beginning of life is filtered through Jesus. I know Jesus doesn't physically show up until the New Testament, but he is, based on Colossians, he is the agent of creation. See, the Bible even says this about Jesus, that he is the agent. He's the reason why things were created. Here's what Paul says in Colossians. He says, he is the reason of everything that's created, the visible and the invisible. So what does that mean? That every single angel that has been created, angels, because of Jesus. Every spirit. You are here because of Jesus. I was created because of Jesus. The world is created. Jesus sustains this world. So as I think about the creation of a family, the creation of a brand new year, 2017, what we're talking about is to know literally the genre. And that genre, that is that type of writing, in this case for Genesis, is a specific writing that you have to read through that genre. Because like if you look at social media today, most people now uses emojis and a bunch of, genre that is hard to, especially if you have Twitter, it's only 140 characters, right? So in 140 characters, it's a specific language, it's a way of thinking, a way of processing life. In the past did not exist. It's a specific genre. So for us as Christians, our genre is the new era, the era of the Holy Spirit, the era of Jesus. And through Jesus, please listen, through Jesus, we process or we understand creation. Creation. The creation, the new beginning of life. So what is that applicable or it reflects on us? Here's what I want to say to you. Jesus determines how life began in this world, and Jesus determines how life is going to end in this world. Is that a fair statement? I'm going to say that again. Jesus, the character, the person, the genre, the style, the worldview of Jesus determines how the world began and how life or the world will end. Now, here's a quick parenthesis on that regard, just so you can settle for a little while, because you might be a little anxious of what's going on in our country, in our world, in your life. Can I just put it to you very simple, and hopefully this is helpful to you. If you noticed, for some reason, which I don't fully understand, God made the beginning of life and the end of life, meaning Genesis, creation, and then for us, the end of life or the end of the world is Jesus' return. Okay? God made those two events, which are important, nothing wrong with them, they're necessary. Those two events, please listen. The beginning of life, Genesis 1, Genesis 2, chapter 1, chapter 2, and I guess the book of Revelation of Jesus' coming again. Those two events, God did not give us a world picture. What does that mean? I'm going to say it again. You and I know that we don't know when Jesus is coming back. Now, you have met some preachers that they have a timeline. They're wrong. I never met them, but they're wrong. Why? Because no one knows the time, neither the hour. The same thing applies to the beginning of life. You and I want a timeline on where the dinosaurs are, how old is the world. God decided for everything that I just gave you, because God is not consumed with a world picture. He wants what does he want? A world view. I'm all for celebrating the journey of my girl. I love this girl. She is my girl. But I want my girl to make decisions based on a worldview. Does that make sense? Exactly what God has done with the beginning of time and the end time. Now, this is my personal belief on that one. You don't have to agree on what I'm about to say. I think the intentionality of beginning and end being obscure, not very clear, it's a worldview, not a world picture. It's because God wants us to focus in the middle. You know what the middle is? Between how life began and when life will end? It's called evangelism. It's called the urgency to tell the world that the world is coming to an end. Jesus is coming back. We're transients. This is not forever, right? But if you disregard the middle, which is evangelism, which is grace in Jesus, which is the love of God, please listen to me for a moment. See, Jesus is extremely crucial because without Jesus, Genesis chapter 1, which is basically God displaying not a world picture, but a world view of who He is. Genesis chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 is not a world picture, it's a world view of what sin is. Humanity, without Jesus, you don't understand those facts. So you and I need Jesus. So today, as we close our time and as we come into a conclusion, here is what I hope you can take home today. When it comes to Genesis and the creation, the beginning of life, and your beginning, when it comes to the understanding of where we are and who we are, please look at me for a moment. Stop approaching life. Stop approaching 2017 with the questions, how and when it happened. If you're in college or you're in high school, you're going to listen to this. If you are a parent of a college student or a high school student, you have to listen to this. Most scientists, most atheists approach creation narrative with the how and the when. Nothing wrong with it. Here's a problem with the how and the then. That is for the world picture. God did not want to give us a world picture. God wanted to give us a world view. So the questions that God answers through Moses for the specific audience that He wrote these books back then, which include us, is not how life began and when it happened. Moses answered two primary questions, not based on a world picture, based on a world view. What are they? Who did it? And what's the other one? Why did He do it? So here's my question to you. Who created the world? God. Why did He do it? Because He loves you. Do you know the details? No. Do you need them? Nope. This is important. This is my young lady. But I want the lady. I don't want the pictures. Does that make sense? I want a young lady that makes decisions that we are compatible because of the scriptures. And I believe that's the message that we have to embrace for 2017. Some of you are going to experience, some of us are going to go through the valley of the shadow and death in 2017. I don't want to sound pessimistic. I know I came very pessimistic. Some of you are going to go through some of the happiest and most exciting times in life in 2017. Would you please listen to this? Stop asking the question, how and when. Whatever God decides to do with this church, with your marriage, with your finances, with your children, with the beautiful United States of America, the question is, who is doing it? His name is God. Why is He doing it? Well, I'm glad you asked. Because Moses is going to reply to that question. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, he basically said this. In the, say it with me, beginning. I'm going to say it again. In the beginning. Implying before time began, before there was anything, from eternity to eternity, something happened. What is it that happened? What happened at the beginning? See, I'm trying to answer the questions of the who and the why. If you're in this place right now, and as you went through tragedies in 2016, and you're still, and again, listen to me, it's legitimate that you want an answer on the how and when. I understand that. I know you're nervous about 2017. I know you're fearful of 2017. I understand that. But if I can invite you this morning to focus on the who and the why, I'm telling you right now, the who is someone that is before time. Before time. And the Bible doesn't tell you when God began. You're going to have to wait until you face God one-on-one to ask that question. But let me just put it to you very, very simple. If I were to bring my little niece, I have a little beautiful niece that I got a picture from her last night, and I were to speak to her right now, and she's only 4 months old. Can you imagine if I tried, look at me, can you imagine if I tried my beautiful Ariel, this is my younger sister's daughter, and if I took Ariel right now, 3 months old, and I tried to explain to her the law of aerodynamics. That's the law that conquers gravity and allows planes to stay in the air. That's called law of aerodynamics. How would you do that? How would you explain to a 3-month-old young lady the law of aerodynamics? I believe that's what Genesis chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3 is about creation. I think God has gone to the lowest of the lowest of the lowest of the common lowest denominator for you and I to understand how the life came into existence. He can do any lower. That's all that you get. And the purpose of the narrative is not to give you a world picture. He wanted to give you a world view. He wanted to tell you who did it. Who was it? It was God. Why did he do it? He did it because God, look at this, because God, look at this, God did not begin with your story. Genesis 1:1 is a story, it's a fact, it's a narrative, it's something that took place and is important. But Genesis 1:1 says that in the beginning, before history began, God was active. Before she was created, and she was formed, and she was ever thought in my wife's and my mind and my heart's desire to have a baby, God knew this young lady. I don't know if this is encouragement to you, but you have to get out of this place with a sense of relief and the beauty of the gospel. This is thousands of years later by a man by the name of Paul. And he writes the following. He says, for he, who's he? God. What did he do? He chose, who did he choose? God chose us. He chose us. Not when your mama and your daddy look at the little thing and it was blue. Your parents may not have planned you. You may have been a surprise to your mommy and your daddy, not to God. They might be accidental parents. There are no accidental children. You were planned. You were thought. You were carefully and wonderfully, this is the book of Psalms, made. And Paul says that before time began, before the creation of this world, he planned you to do what? To be holy. See, here's a beautiful thing. The word holy means set apart. You were set apart. You were set apart to be blameless in his sight. So as we pray today, as you embrace a brand new experience of 2017, as we move forward, would you take with you not the how, not the when, but the who and the why? And some of the things that you have gone in 2016 and you will go in 2017 will be irreversible. Some of the things that you will face this year will be beyond your ability to even pray to God. You will have no words. You will have no ability to utter in any language the pain and the depth of the grief in your heart and in your soul. But I want you to rest at peace today and to understand, fully embrace that nothing happens in this world without the permission of the God who created you, who thought about you, who planned you. Not simply to give you the safety and the details of life, but to give you an adventure, to give you a promise. Please look at me. And to give you himself to you. He gave himself to you. He gave his very own self to you 2,000 years ago. He came and dwelt among us, and he went to a cross. That today, regardless of where you come from, regardless of where you're going, today you can fully embrace and declare that I am no accident. That what took place as dark and difficult and just inconceivable has been, God has a plan. God has a way of thinking and processing things. And yes, I have been conceived. I'm in this time in history. I'm a part of this generation because He thought about me before the creation of the world, that I will walk in holiness and I will walk without blame in His sight. If that's your heart's desire, would you please stand this morning as we pray?